Hello and welcome to another episode of Educational. This is Roy.
This is Terry.
So we are chronicling our journey through the aging process, hopefully trying to make some substantial changes now so we can have a better life as we do age. You know, we talk about not wanting to outlive our wellness for sure. We want to have a good, consistent life with being within our mind, being able to think and also being able to move. Nothing worse than having to have a serious illness and not being able to get out and do the things that you like to do. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that. We also talk about things that our parents are bumping up into, how we've solved them, new things that we figured out, try to bring a little bit of information so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, when it's time for you. And another thing is just to let you know that other people are going through this too, so there's always a place to reach out for help. But we also have guests on from time to time, and today is no different, and I'm going to let Terry introduce Carmen.
Carmen Davailus is a consultant and photographer, inspiring audiences around the world with humor and her compassionate way of telling stories with images. During her 40-year nursing career, she worked with thousands of people seeking meaning and connection during challenging times, and continues to do so with her camera. She is an entrepreneur with 2 businesses, Carmen's Legacy Productions and Doggies for Dementia. She is an international speaker, inspiring audiences using photography and storytelling, and is an award-winning author of Just See Me, Sacred Stories from the Other Side of Dementia. Carmen is also an Alzheimer's dementia advocate and founder of Doggies for Dementia Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit corporation using photography to capture family memories and raise awareness for Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. Doggies for Dementia has been featured on both NBC and ABC. Carmen, welcome to the show. We've been waiting for a long time to speak with you.
Thank you. I listened to that. I'm like, wow, 40 years.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and people are always like, oh my gosh, who is she talking about?
Yeah.
Is that me? It was you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, 42 now. Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I just have to say it is such a pleasure to be here because I know we connected on Instagram and since then other social media, and I love what you're doing, and it's a treat. It's a treat to be here.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and that's what really attracted us to you was we love dogs. We've got a couple. And then the dementia aspect, that's close to Terry's heart because she lost her dad to that. But also, it's so prevalent now, and it's something that we don't want to think about. We don't really want to deal with it, but unfortunately, sometimes we have to. And so anyway, that, and then I think listening to the intro, talking about the pictures, because that's something else that we try to advocate for is documentation of people's lives. Unfortunately, when people are gone, we realize how not many pictures, how little pictures we have, and how much documentation, writing, what they did for a living, and who their parents were, what they like. Just there's so much about it. Yeah.
Their story.
So anyway, well, tell us a little bit from how did you get here from nursing to Doggies for Dementia and taking pictures?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of time as a nurse and a nurse practitioner. Even so, the last decade or so, even more than that, was primarily elderly, so 65 and older. I don't consider that elderly, but 65 and older.
That's a knife through my heart.
The age gets older every time, right?
Yeah, and I more and more of that, and I did house calls and some in long-term care communities, and not everyone in long-term care community has dementia, of course, but I several of my clients did. And then I started to see more and more, and I realized the families just had really unique challenges. And I really wasn't ready to meet that. So I needed to learn. And so we're talking even 10 or 15 years ago, and we've come a long way since then, and early diagnosis and such. But it got to then I worked with a geriatric psychiatrist, dementia primarily, and then neurology. And it was just, I just kept thinking there's got to be more. We can do. And I was I worked at Seton the very last part of my career, and they said, look, if you need 45 minutes for a visit, you need to help family, take it. just block yourself, which was amazing, right? In
Yes.
today's healthcare, just really
Right.
unique and special. And I did that when I needed to. And I just felt like, wow, there's just so much to the stories. And I thought if the world knew about what it was like for them, their triumphs and their challenges, there would be such less pettiness in the world.
Yeah.
And I didn't think most people knew, because I thought, I'm in this world and I didn't know a lot about it. How
Yeah.
does anybody who's not involved in it know? And so I thought, I'm going to tell these stories. And I left to write a book, which I followed 13 families for about 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I can't do that without photos. And I was a hobbyist. I always had my camera with me. And it's funny because I thought, what do I want to do? If I ever didn't do this, what would I do? And my camera is right around my neck. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
why did I not think of it? Because
Yeah.
that's my great joy, camera. And what I realized in the photos, and I started putting them on social media with the families, everybody knew. And our mission was to raise awareness and to teach people with this through the stories, and for their legacy. And the ones with dogs always got the most attention. So people would stop and read the stories and learn because they were interested. Oh my gosh, look at the dog. What's that
Oh.
story about? And when it was people, it's like, but a dog.
Right. Right.
So I thought, oh, and then I thought, well, why don't we then use that and meet the people where they're at and include dogs, which are the most fun sessions most of the time anyway, because it's candid and loving and joyful, or whatever it might be, whatever the dog is doing, and the interaction is natural. And that's how Doggies for Dementia came about. There's a good
Okay.
4 or 5 years
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and things. But
No, that's cool because
Yeah.
that's a little bit why we started the show, is because the not knowing what you don't know until you're in the throes of usually a crisis. And that's
that's
the
it.
not, that's, it's hard to gather all the information that we have. It's just easier to make poor decisions. And so anyway, I think that's a great
Yeah.
mission because, we want to, that's again talking about, somebody has been through this before.
Yeah.
If we can share that, it may save people some time. We still advocate, do your own research, but another thing is start the conversation early. And then if you never have to put anything into action, then you can consider yourself one of the lucky ones. But, it's so much, there's so many conversations to have wrapped around growing old, not just the dementia part.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the world is a very lonely place when we feel like we're the only ones going through
Right.
something.
Yeah.
And that was one of the common threads in all the family stories and in interviews, was the isolation and loneliness.
Right.
And they felt because people didn't understand or know.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what if we change that?
Yeah.
What if we, you know, and I really started to think about the days, and as even a younger nurse, but it wasn't that long ago, breast cancer wasn't something you even said out loud.
Right.
It's like, oh, female cancer, and you don't talk about it, and women struggled all by themselves. And that changed when people started sharing their stories and getting out there and said, well, yeah, this can be really difficult, but this can also be really beautiful. And this is what we're going to talk about. And it's changed
Yeah.
dramatically. And I hope I see that in my lifetime when it comes to Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, where the stigma and the isolation piece of it isn't something families are going
Yeah.
through on top of everything else.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Can you share a couple of stories from the Just See Me book?
Sure. So let me think.
I'd
Well, I
love
can
to.
tell you one. Judy is
Oh,
both
yeah.
she was in the book, her family, and they happened to be toward the end of my stay at were patients of mine too. And her daughter was just like, I don't know what to do, and I'm not sure what to do. And she was just feeling so lost, and she was doing her best to care for both of her parents and herself, and failing at her taking care of herself completely, and
Yes.
getting sicker and sicker. And when I left, I'm like, well, would you like to be a part of the book? And she goes, yes, I have so much to say about that. And so their story was in the book, and they live in a very small town out in the country. And Judy's grandparents actually helped build this church that's in this very small community, like one street. And so we did her photos there, and that's where
Oh,
she
nice.
grew up her whole life, and it
Yeah.
was a big thing. And her daughter, Roxanne, said to me, she goes, I guess you should know I haven't told anybody that my mom has dementia. We go to
Oh,
church and we're here, but nobody really knows that she has Alzheimer's.
Oh,
But when your book comes out, that's when they're going to find out.
yeah.
that's the big
Oh,
reveal.
that's the
And
big
that's just something,
reveal.
you think that you're protecting them by not telling them,
Hmm.
but I think more people know than you think, especially if they're
Yeah.
exposed to them. It just
Yeah,
maybe
and some were
not as much.
surprised. But her daughter needed that support,
Oh, yeah.
and she just wasn't sure how people were going to react to what was going to happen,
Yeah.
and there was a great deal of fear there. And so when it came for the Doggies for Dementia, she said, my niece has this dog, and it's the one with the underbite, Molly, she said, oh, it's a puppy who was very calm puppy, and it was just a sweet AQV. They were like giving each other the side looks, and like, I don't know what you're doing here, and I don't know what you're doing here, and it was really sweet, and they loved carrying on their mother's legacy and grandmother and the stories, and that she was honored in a really beautiful way.
Oh, that's
That was a
awesome.
real treat for her family
That's
and her
cool.
And how
grandchildren.
did the community react? I mean, did they respond
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
differently than she expected, or I guess you can't really expect, you know?
Yeah, and she learned to ask for help that she needed,
Yeah.
and that was okay, because I think she felt like people weren't going to understand why she needed the help. And,
Right.
well, what's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Why can't you take care of your two teenage kids and your father, and be a wife and run the ranch and take care of your mother too?
Right.
Like, well, that's a
Well,
lot anyway. And then you add Alzheimer's, so the community has rallied,
yeah.
and her
Oh,
family supports the.
oh, I can
Mhm,
imagine, especially
mhm.
with her mother growing up there, or her grandmother growing up. And was it wait, grandmother, or mother, Judy,
It was her
her
mother. Yeah,
mother?
Roxanne's
Yeah.
mother is Judy, and yeah, she was
Okay.
our.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's kind of because we don't understand it a lot. One note I just jotted down was that sometimes we don't want to see what can happen to us, and so once people find out their friend has it, sometimes they can actually pull away for two
Right.
reasons. I think number one, because you don't know how to act. Instead of just acting like you always have, we think we got to say the right thing or do this thing, but
Mm-hmm.
really just that love and being close is really what they need. And then
Hmm.
also sometimes we don't want to see our future, and so it scares people
Yeah.
that it's like,
Hmm.
oof, I can't be around it because it frightens me.
Hmm. Yeah, the most moving story that had to do with that was David and Joan. And I had seen him a few times in the office too, but I didn't know them well. And I had gone to their house to do this interview, and Joan meets and David is was a journalist, and lost his ability to speak. We thought he could understand pretty well, but he couldn't express himself or write, and which just had to be terrible for someone who's a journalist,
Right.
and his wife, and they're just both brilliant. And she answers the door, and I've got my stuff, and I'm excited about for the book. And she goes, I know you think you're going to write another fluff piece here, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be real about how this is. And she really kind of let me have it.
Yeah.
And then she da, 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 and she goes, so you're going to leave now? And I'm like, no, I'm really here for the truth. Let's talk about this.
Right.
And she was really one of the first ones that was brutally honest about the impact of the people, as you talked about, who said, well, I want to remember him the way he was.
Right.
So I'm
Awesome.
not going to, or I'm not sure what to say. I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. So I'm not going to come over. And
Yeah.
their friends just physically moved away,
Yeah.
and it was so painful for both of them, who had been very social and active in their community. And she described it in such a way that, in fact, their story is the one most people will contact me about. That, and of course, as I followed up and it all came out, she's like, I can't believe you actually came in after that conversation on the porch. They're like, oh, that's really what we wanted to have,
Yeah. Right.
and I just love her so, and I thought, I appreciated
Yeah.
that
The candor.
and it was so raw, their pain, and he wasn't able to express himself, but you could see it in his face.
Yeah.
And I thought, how would that be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
How
I
would that
love
be?
that story. It's making me
Yeah.
tear up
Yeah.
just thinking about
And
it.
yeah,
Well,
and he could play harmonica. So his dog
Really?
Luna, when he played harmonica, Luna would howl along or
oh,
he'd
wow.
bark or something.
Oh,
And so they were one of the first with a dog in the image because Luna just showed up and was singing along. And I thought, well, I got
Interesting.
that. Mhm.
oh, that is a
Yeah, so there
great
are
story.
no, there's no coincidences. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just,
Well, and
yeah.
again, it's we feel the way we feel, and so again, letting other people know that it's okay. You have to work through this. It's not always going to be, that happy story that we would love it to be, but again, here are some things that maybe you can do to navigate that situation. So I think those are probably as helpful to people that are, starting the dementia journey than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is hard.
And
It is hard.
another
There's
cool thing.
more stuff, there's
Yeah.
more resources, but it just doesn't make it that it's going to be an easy journey. It's
No,
a
it
lot
Right.
of
just means
learning.
there's more noise. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
so much more.
Hmm.
But the cool
Hmm.
thing we've noticed on Instagram, and we've actually had a couple, had one on, and I think we've got one coming up. But caregivers, and this one, the one we talked to, happened to be a grandchild who is caring for grandma. And what really struck us about her was one where she had a treadmill in the room, and then you could see grandmother over kind of to the right of the picture sitting in a chair with her bowl of cereal, and she was just saying, trying to talk about keeping your days normal and, how to work through it. So she had figured out she could sit grandma over there and eat her cereal while she was doing her walking or running. And so, those are, I think that's another great thing is people are starting to put more of these out on social media for the public to see that,
Yes.
it may not be the same as normal, but it's going to be a new normal, and you can figure out ways to overcome some of these hurdles that we're going to run
Hmm.
into.
Hmm.
And you don't know where the help could come from. I mean, you could get help from that. Just sharing your story,
Hmm.
being accountable, and you just never know who's going to be touched by which part of your story.
That's
And
right.
that's what I love about Doggies for Dementia. And oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a dog lover too. So
Oh,
Yeah.
for
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
it's like a natural. And people are thinking that my dog Sparky is going to be the one in their pictures. And like, well, I'm
Oh,
not the best mom of dog mommy,
oh yeah.
he's
Ours
not
has
that well
so much
behaved.
energy. That's same as ours. And I have to tell you, I have been, I mean, ever since I can remember, we always had dogs growing up.
Mhm.
And I always went through the wantads, circled them, went and bought a puppy. I would go and buy a little puppy and bring it home and say that it followed me in the park. There's no way I could leave it. It was raining. I couldn't do it. So I would always find a reason to go and get another dog. I could never have too many. And some
Yes.
of them we had to rehome
Yeah.
to other children who didn't have dogs. That's how my mom would explain it after she yelled at me for bringing another one. But
Yeah.
yeah, and dad,
Yeah.
and I have to tell you, dad would be, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, just behind mom going, yes, yes, yes. And then whose lap is the dog in every time I came home. That's
Mhm.
exactly how it was. And he would have a dog in his lap, and he would be holding a bone for him to chew on in his
Mhm.
lap. It was
Yeah.
a
I
partnership.
what I wonder sometimes if dogs don't sense like who needs me most today,
Yeah.
who needs the
Right.
most love today, and that's where they're going, and they're just all over that.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
Well, and
yeah,
my stepfather is starting to suffer from dementia, and it's funny because you're from Texas too, so you remember the February freeze out. We were without power for about a week,
Yes.
and
here
so
too.
luckily we stayed at my mom and stepdad's, and they never lost power, so we were very lucky. But we had the two dogs, and we were concerned about. They're not little dogs; they're big dogs, and
65
they're
plus.
very personal. They want to get in your space and jump on you and love you and all that, which is cool for us. But we were worried about how they were going to interact.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they had never had dogs that I can remember. But it was amazing because he was so fascinated by them that
really
he
was.
couldn't. That's all he could focus on was, do they get along? Do they eat? Just all of these questions. And then even for, maybe a month after that was over, every time we would see them, he'd always ask, how are the dogs? And so we took him over there a couple times just so he could see them. But it was an interesting interaction and result of something that I didn't think it was going to go that way.
Yeah, people often ask, do I supply the dogs? Do we supply the dogs?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's families. It has to be a familiar dog of some sort, because you just don't know how it would go otherwise.
Right.
So there's got to be some familiarity. But the other piece of it, even then, you just don't know how it's going to go or
Right.
what's going to be of interest. And that alone is intriguing because it's there are no expectations, which is a real blessing, by the way, for the people with dementia as well. They don't have, nobody's looking for them to do anything but how they are, which especially in earlier stages, there's some pressure there that people are watching me, or am I going to say the wrong thing?
Right.
And families might feel that way when
Yeah.
someone else is present, like, or what's going to happen, and which is probably the good thing that I had that experience. And like, nothing's going to
Nothing
surprise
phases
about
me,
It's
right?
okay. I get it. That's just how it is. This is your place to be you. And when you add a dog to that mix, it's just like it's just this. It's like the perfect moments for me. And people will say, like, do you always smile? I'm like, it's like my camera's in my hand. I'm always smiling.
Yeah.
It's just it for
Yeah.
me.
So did you
Yeah.
notice?
That's
Did you notice any behaviors of the dogs or the people? Because I didn't know if the dog can sense that the person is sick, if the dog stays very close to them and is like always right with them, or
protective.
did they maybe move away, or did you notice have you noticed anything about like that?
No, not so much. I mean, obviously, we're setting it up. We let what happens happen, but we're setting it up in a location. And I've got the lights, continuous lights, and no flashes. And we let everybody get used to the lights and me being there. And pretty soon they forget I'm there, because then they're just, playful and being what they are. I've observed that at other times, but not for the shoots so much.
Okay.
It's just that there's their interaction, which
All
is
right.
unique to all of them. Yeah. I know my dog did. I was sick. The beginning of the pandemic, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'm pretty sure my dogs knew before I even knew.
Yeah.
And I thought, they are so clingy. They just
Yeah.
won't leave me alone. And like, I'm tripping over them. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I really think they sense something is not right.
I have heard that before, that they can sense. There are some dogs that are very sensitive to some forms of cancer, and then also it's not a dog, but it's a cat. I'm not a big cat person. Not that I dislike them. I'm just more of a dog person.
They're just more independent.
But there was a nursing home that had a cat, and this cat would go to the person who was dying and curl up with them. And so they would usually give like a 2 to 3 days to a week notice that, this person is going to pass, so then the people who were healthy got nervous every time they saw that cat coming down the hall, thinking, hope it's not stopping in my room.
Oh, my goodness.
Keep that cat away from me.
That's right.
Yeah. And I guess it's a really good question, because I'm thinking, we set up, we know the dogs were familiar with everyone that we were able to do sessions with.
Yeah.
But it did seem that even puppies were really subdued and are not wild puppies around the person with dementia they were with. It was like there was a connection there, which is what I was talking about with Judy. They just kind of give each other side eye, like, I don't know what this is about, but we're here. And some of the looks at each other were just like identical to one another. Yeah. I don't know, mirroring or what, but.
That's the awesome thing about dogs, though, is I was thinking, again, leading up to this, I've just been thinking a lot about, our dogs, they never have a bad day. They're always happy to see you, no matter how you feel, they're always there. And I guess it goes with that emotional support mechanism that a lot of people have animals for, but how can you be upset or not feel good when you have this animal that just can't give you enough love?
Yeah, it's all so unconditional. Do you,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Carmen, how is your health now?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm
Okay,
fine.
good.
I had surgery and recovered, and I'm, thankfully, it's like
Oh,
the best of the worst. So,
Oh,
yes.
but
good.
during a pandemic of all things, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God,
No, I
I
did.
can't work. I'm sick. I'm by
Yes.
myself at the time. I'm like, oh my goodness. And my
Oh,
dogs were just such good company
Oh,
for me during that time.
oh,
Well,
good.
all the time, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
definitely during that time, I thought, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have my dogs
Right.
Oh, I'm so
on
glad to
lockdown.
hear that.
When for other people I knew who lived alone during the lockdown, I thought, oh, and I saw people getting dogs. I thought, oh, good for you,
Yeah.
because it
Right.
really means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was going to also ask you, you just pretty recently or received a donation for Doggies for Dementia, the foundation, correct?
Yeah, well, we have ongoing fundraisers
Yes.
here and there. We Shields, which is a large not department store, a sporting good store. I guess they're really
Okay.
huge in the Midwest, and now they're in Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never seen anything so huge in my life. And yeah, so we've got a wonderful donation from them and some
Awesome.
recognition and things, which we were thrilled about.
That
So.
is so cool.
That is,
Yeah.
yes, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Congratulations.
and, we, the beauty of social media, I know there's a lot of bad
Right.
people will talk. I personally, it has connected me to people all around the world, even more than ever before. And we get donations and comments and just beautiful letters from people from everywhere, just from everywhere. And,
Oh,
so small or big, each one is like when we have our board meetings and we go through it, it just really touches our
Yeah.
hearts. I'm just like,
oh,
okay.
Now,
Yeah.
I was looking in your background. You've got some pictures I see, but also it looks like a painting. Do you paint as well?
I don't.
You
No,
don't?
see, this is, yeah, I met a gal on Instagram,
Okay.
and it's Art for Alls with the four. And it was raising money for the walk that she does in honor of her grandmother who had Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And during the lockdown and all, she has, I think, a 4 or 5 year old son. He might be a little older, but around that
Yeah.
age. And she's like, "What do we do?" They're in board, and she had never painted before, and they started painting things, and then she sells them on Instagram for like $25. These hand painted pieces that she and her son made to help
Wow.
raise money for her walk. And I saw the dog, and I thought, "Oh well, I know where that needs to go."
Right.
that's
Yeah, yeah. So
awesome.
I met her, and we did a little program, and yeah, it's just one of those really beautiful things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, so
Yes. No,
we're.
I don't paint.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, I just saw it was surrounded by the photos, so I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. So, what's
Yeah.
next for Doggies for Dementia? I mean, where are you hoping to grow, take this? What's the future look like?
Yeah. The pandemic has hit us really hard.
Yeah.
We really needed to. So from going, because our population is vulnerable, to go and do photographs was out of the question.
Right.
With especially in long-term care communities, we could still go to people's homes, of course, and we do those. But for long-term care, and even that was super careful.
Yeah.
And so we looked at our mission, said it's about raising awareness, and we have a YouTube channel that we're doing programs and our blogs and things. And so for us, that we're anxious to get out and start telling stories again,
Yeah.
and meeting people and doing the photographs. And also, as things open, we're looking to train other photographers around the country who'd like to be a part of this, to be a part of the Doggies for Dementia group, and to take that to their communities as
Oh,
well.
that's awesome.
As much as I love to travel, I can't be everywhere.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, and I think that is our next big thing is to start adding some volunteer photographers. Now I'm going to begin in Texas. We're going to begin close and, and grow slowly as we do. But that's.
Do you already have photographers in other states as well, or is it just in Texas for now?
Yeah, we are, as far as the nonprofit is concerned, I did the paperwork for this in March of 2020. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I am not rushing you.
Yeah. So about now, it was like 3 weeks or 2 weeks before the lockdown.
Wow.
We had been working on it, filed the papers, and then the lockdown things happened.
Oh my gosh.
And so a lot of our plans, and I had done shoots before that. It was part of Doggies for Dementia. We were an official nonprofit, although I did it under my for-profit business, but always free for families as it is now. It's always free for families. And I was funding it, but we just officially made it a nonprofit. And then the lockdown, and we want to protect our people, and we want people to be safe. And so, and so even if we have some people who are interested, but we've got to have practice sessions and people get out there. Yeah. And I have, I think, 3 different communities that are all signed up and ready for September, October sessions, especially for Alzheimer's awareness, which I'm thrilled about.
Yes.
And then we have the increasing numbers. So I don't even think those are going to happen.
That's been a double-edged sword for, I think, for seniors, all seniors, and then those with dementia, is that, they are vulnerable. We don't want to, bring the outside germs into them, or virus, or however. But again, that loneliness is so devastating for them as well, that, it really does my heart good to see these families that have found creative ways to, be outside the window and go see their loved ones. And so we really need to think outside the box, if this is going to get bad again, how we can continue to have some kind of a human contact, maybe not contact, but human interaction through a glass or whatever. And it's a great thing about, not if the pandemic had to happen, now is an awesome time because we have technology. So at least if the seniors can make the FaceTime work, that's great. Or, staff can help them do the FaceTime where you can at least see people and have a little bit of interaction. And I saw one community that they had gone out and bought a bunch of orchestra music holder stands and then a bunch of iPads. And so they'd all get it all set up and then take that and set it by the, senior where they could interact with their family. So a lot of creative ways to do that.
Yeah, it has brought up some huge, a crisis actually, and really made us stop and look, these are what we say we value, and how do we carry through on our values and how we care for our senior citizens in the United States, and it's really across the world, but I'll talk about what I know. And looking at do we primarily focus on the physical health only and the protection and isolation and this, when we saw people, and I can tell you, like Carol, the pictures behind me is vibrant. She's 90 something, and we celebrated her birthday, and the isolation just caused such a decline that unbelievable and quickly, and so we're recognizing that, hey, maybe we need to think about emotional health too,
right.
Which we always said we valued, but then what do we do? And who knew, because this was a new, who thought we would have a pandemic and all of these things. And so, not looking at blaming, it's like, okay, now we got to really think, and you're right about that. Now we got to really think about where our values, how are we going to manage this, and how do we take care of people in a holistic way, that their emotional needs and family needs and physical safety. Yeah. And where's that going to be, and who's going to determine that?
Yeah. Yeah. Because who would have ever thought it would have gone, because in March of 2020, I think everybody fully expected that, it was going to be bad through the summer, but then by, the fall, it was going to be better. But then, as we started getting through April and May, then people realized, not going to be over that. And then now we've got this new variant that's out there. So it's like, well, and I don't know
And another
about
one.
everywhere, but like our numbers here in DFW are skyrocketing, and they expect that the younger kids to actually surpass the peaks that we had, at the fall of last year. So anyway, it's like then how many more variants are going to come along? And so I guess at some point we have to say maybe this is the new normal, even though we don't like it and wouldn't want it. So we got to figure out those ways to, take care of everybody.
Yeah, and we're a society that has really never had to face any kind of pandemic, plague, anything.
Yeah.
So our thought is, well, typically you get sick, you take a pill, and then you're back to normal.
Yes.
Everything's back to normal. But it's different than that, and it's going to require a whole shift in mindset. And like, oh, okay, this is what needs to happen, and then readjust. And I know many families are very involved in movements to change who's considered primary caregivers, especially for long-term care, because many didn't see their families for their loved one for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And they were watching through the window, and literally, not to be, I don't want to go on all to the negative side here, but some only saw their loved one. They said, we're given a choice. You can see them now, or they're declining. You can see them like shortly before their death.
Yeah.
And I mean like shortly before, like hours. They had to make a choice.
Yeah. And
you can't do both because we
No.
can't let you in twice.
And do you remember? I think her name was Mary Daniel, where her husband was in a facility, and she ended up, a professional, very educated, ended up getting a job in the kitchen of the facility, just so she could visit her husband.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah, and she formed a group. It was Caregivers for Compromise, I believe.
Yes.
Family. Yeah, and then it was one group, and then there were so many people. Each state has their own. And I went to the Texas group one to hear about it and to record their stories. That's our mission too.
Right.
I'm like, let me hear your story. So I kept a distance. We're at the courthouse, and I walked away a changed person, because I did not know what it was like for some of the families. And because it was such an unknown how to handle it, do the local communities, do they listen to corporate? Do they listen to CDC? Is it the state guidelines, or is it the federal guidelines? Who are they supposed to, how are they? Yeah. And so you might go down the street and they have different rules than the one, so it's kind of like, okay, when we know better, we'll do better. And families are really taking really some strong action to, and she's quite vocal, by the way.
She is at the forefront. She certainly is. I enjoy seeing all of her. I mean, not enjoy, but I mean, I enjoy learning about everything that she's trying to lobby for, and all the changes she's trying to make. I think it's an awesome thing.
Yeah, they really inspiration.
Yes.
I read the stories. I listened. I'm like,
I know.
Yeah.
I meant to ask you before we started if it would be okay to ask you this question, but since we're already in the throes, I'm gonna just, if you choose not to respond, I definitely understand that. But Terry did some research on this new Alzheimer's treatment.
I do.
And some stuff that's come out since then, not been supportive. Let's put it that way. Anyway, I just thought, since you were a nurse practitioner and you've got the medical side to look at this, and would you mind sharing your opinion with us?
Sure. I will say I have a good friend who has early onset Alzheimer's, and he and his dog Buddy were part of our photo, and he lives in New Jersey, and Jeff Borghoff, and he's been in Alzheimer's Association, one of their advocates and things. And when I visited his wife, and he said he's been in the trial program. So I want to say it's been almost 2 years then I was there. So well before this time in the trials. And for them, he's, I think, 56, 57 at the time. Wow. And his wife is a little younger, and she's, actively working, and their lives had changed dramatically. Yeah. And the hope that was put into the trial and the drug, that it would make a difference, was beyond words and what it meant. And so sometimes, they're wondering, like, I don't know if it's helping, maybe it is. We don't know what would happen if it wasn't, if he wasn't taking,
Right.
but he continued on the trials. And so knowing that, and then watching and knowing when they stopped the drug trials, what that meant to them, and then continued. And what I know about it scientifically is very little.
Okay.
Very little. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
So I kind of hung up my white coat.
Yeah.
And I read things and see. I don't really have a strong opinion about that. But what I do know is the emotions that and the people's lives that are riding on this this drug, as well as some others, but this one in particular. And when I read that this has changed or that has changed, I'm just thinking about what is that like, sitting at the table or drinking coffee with them and hearing this.
And I think you're right there. I've always felt like that was why the big effort was to push it through, was not that it would or wouldn't work necessarily. There was a hope that it would work, and bringing hope to people is sometimes, that's a huge impact. And I don't know, it's like everything else. If you have this positive aspect of even when you're ill, maybe you don't get cured, but maybe you live a better life of what you have. And so I think that is one aspect of this that you really can't put a dollar sign on. But then the other part of that is the false hope. Are we giving people false hope? And I don't know. It was just bizarre the way, what little we know about it, and we haven't really followed up the last month or so. But with the committee, I think most of the committee that was involved that said, no, we don't want it, they've all resigned. And it's just it was kind of an odd situation to have so much turmoil in a regulatory agency about
brought a lot of light.
Yeah.
A little light into the FDA and their processes and procedures, and everybody kind of gears it toward whichever outcome that they're hoping for. And maybe it's run, a big pharma thing. So it's like, so confused.
Yeah.
But
it was so confusing. And I will just even say, as a nurse practitioner, what I do know when I'm faced with families and go, what can we do? We had medicines we thought might slow it down, but not for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'd say, now, how are we going to know that it helps if it's meant to slow it down and not make it better?
Right.
And because for some people they might make it better, but not all. And I didn't want to say, yes, it's going to make it better, because I can't guarantee that at all. That was like unusual, more unusual. And so I say, look, this is the best we have.
Yeah.
This is the best we have right now. We think it can help. It's worth a try. And if there's any bad, if there's if they don't do well with it, clearly we stop it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they say, well, in a year or two, how do we know if sometimes if we stop it, they get worse again, but we don't know who that's going to happen to. It's horribly cruel.
Yeah.
It's horribly cruel.
Yes.
And they're like, well, do I stop it and let nature take its course? Are they going to get worse right away? Like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's the reality of what we do have.
Yeah.
Approved.
Right. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that is what we do know. And so when I'm hearing this other things, I'm like, that's not that much different than what we already do know. And we're telling people we really hope it helps, but we don't know.
Yeah.
But we're not sure. There's no
But
guarantee.
it's all we got.
Yeah,
it's all we've got, and that's all they have to look forward to. And it's like, if I don't have, if I take it now and it helps, then maybe I'll have a longer life with my family. And we're talking sometimes people in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just devastating.
Where they say, like, I'm willing to take the chance.
Yeah.
I'll take the chance. And if it doesn't work, well, at least I tried.
Yeah.
You don't have you just don't have any other options. My dad, we lost him in 2014, and he suffered from it. It was dementia, Pick's disease, dementia. So, he was on Aricept for many years, and it seemed to help for a while. But if he were around now, his daughter would say, whatever it takes, there is no other option. I mean, there's nothing else. If he takes it, maybe it helps him, maybe it speeds up the process, whatever. If he doesn't, then definitely nothing's going to happen. I mean, he's going to continue to progress with this disease, and he's going to pass away without any other option available to him. So I would be grasping at straws, wanting him to do whatever necessary to keep him around selfishly,
Of course. Yeah. And I think, again, because we are a society, if we take a pill and it makes it better.
Yes.
And this is not the case with dementia yet. We don't have that. I don't think that's a common knowledge for the general public unless you've experienced it. Yeah. What it's like to have nothing, no hope at all until there's a little bit of hope.
And I think a message maybe to younger people is to clean up your lifestyle, make some changes. Yeah. Not that, I don't know. There's, I'm not sure if they've ever really come down on, hereditary versus lifestyle, but I do know that there are a lot of things that we can control that, there's some research I've done years ago was that a lot of this Alzheimer's became more prevalent after the low-fat diet craze of the 70s, and that, maybe the fat, I've read some research and actually went and heard a presentation about, coconut oil and the use of that, trying to, we've cut out so much of the fat that's one thing that supposedly, I guess,
protects your brain.
Yeah.
The fat. That's the right fat that you need, the omega-6s and 3s and 9s and all of that. So if we can get the younger people to start eating, more organically and for brain health, gut health, all of that, instead of eating all the processed everything.
And exercising some.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to do.
There's a psychologist I've had a few interviews with on our program who works with people with mild cognitive impairment quite a bit, and just for people who are aging. And he's just like, well, healthy body, healthy mind to start with, right? And so the moving, the socialization, the healthy eating, it's the whole, again, that
all of it,
holistic, that, because what happens in the body happens in the brain, and vice versa. And so I was kind of like, okay, that at least can help our bodies resist disease.
Sleep is important as well. I think that Terry did turn up a study a couple weeks ago about the sleep deprived and how that raises our chances as well. So stress.
And that, and so many people, and probably some of your listeners, are in that sandwich generation. And similar to Roxanne, I was talking about caring for their children and their parents and themselves. And the ones that usually get left out are themselves.
Yeah. Again, we'll do another message for the caregivers, as that is so important for them, because there was a study at one time that said for those that are, some of the worst dementia patients, their caregivers will die 80% of the time before the actual dementia patient will die, or their loved one. So that gets back to self-care, and there are great respite programs. There are people that are willing to help, but you have to know it's out there, and you have to understand, if you're not here, who is going to take care of your loved one? So that should be some motivation to really focus on self-care, where you can take the best care of your loved one as possible.
Yeah. And it's a challenging thing. And for a lot of people, it's learning self-care anew.
Yes.
First time they've ever really thought about it.
Right.
Like, me too. Especially women. They're like, what? I don't know. And like, this is really hard. And it's like, how do you be a daughter to your mother when you really are more of a mother? You have to be more motherly, and it's at 24/7, and it's a constant thing, and while you're caring for your children and yourself.
And it's not selfish. I mean, it's so difficult. Not selfish to take care of yourself. You have to reframe yourself to think, okay, yes. And it's not the guilt part of it. I mean, it's not that we're trying to guilt you, but whatever works. I mean, if you need to be guilted into it, take care of yourself. I'm kidding.
Yeah, and I know I traveled with a friend of mine who spoke, and he early onset Alzheimer's, is younger than me, and when we had like 2 or 3 places in a row. So I was there, and I was caring for him, but he did really well. But there were times he wasn't.
Right.
And I remember one afternoon, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to kick myself for ever saying to people, you got to take good care of yourself, even take 5 minutes, because I
Right.
didn't even have 5 minutes to
Yeah.
take care.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
tough.
was like there was something happening. Like
All
if
the
I
time.
Yeah.
went to take a shower, I heard like what happened to the coffee? And, I'm like, well, you should have bought me the kind of coffee maker I'm used to. And I had just done that. And that was it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was just, and then the next day it's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I got it. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh,
Ah,
oh,
there it
this is
is.
not easy. There it is. There it is. Yeah.
Well, thanks
Wow.
for
A lot of
that
support.
digression. I know, it's just good to get your opinion as well. Since you're out there working with a lot of people with dementia and their families. So thank you for
Yeah.
digressing with us and giving us your opinions there. All right. Well, a couple things. What is a tool or a habit? What is something that you do every day that you feel adds a lot of value to your life?
Well, I know it seems kind of funny because it's what I do for a living too, but for me to go out in nature and photograph, just walk, see the flowers, I get down on the ground, I look at all different angles. To me, I can lose hours and it doesn't even seem like it.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of one with the bees and
Yeah.
never been stung. I've been surrounded. And it's
Wow.
that to me is just, the most peaceful thing.
Yeah.
And my dog Sparky, of
Yeah.
course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny
gotta take
because we moved out to a very unique place a few years ago now, and Terry is not a pioneer woman, and I don't think she minds me saying that
Not
out
like
loud.
bugs.
But it is amazing just the quality of life because she has a little herd of deer that
I
she takes
do.
care of, and we've got a family of raccoons that come out at night and go to the feeder and try to eat the corn.
Steal the deer
But,
feed.
armadillos, all this stuff, and it's just amazing to be able to step out and just enjoy the world that is around us.
Just
for
taking
sure.
a
Yes.
deep breath, just inhaling and exhaling, and the
Yeah.
trees, and not the snakes. Still not fans of those.
Oh no, no, that's where I draw the line on the
Yeah.
snake.
I don't like the
I wear my
snakes.
boots and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Yes, I am a flip flop
Yeah.
girl. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is
Yeah.
it has made a huge difference. Just being out here, the stillness, the sounds, the smells, just everything has
Yeah.
just made a huge difference.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
come on, come
Yeah.
on.
We're not that far.
Yeah.
No.
We will be headed that way
Yeah.
soon.
That's right.
Very soon. Yeah.
All right, Carmen. Well, tell us a little bit about Doggies for Dementia, and then tell us also about the photography and what you do, who you like to work with, how you can help, and of course how they can reach out and get a hold of you, and also the foundation. Just tell us a little bit about everything you got going on.
Okay, that's a lot, right?
Well, there's another hour right there.
Yeah. I would just say, so definitely for families that are impacted by dementia, the Doggies for Dementia program, we do actually, for most, it's 2 photo sessions, one with the dog, and that might be, I take my time to make sure everybody's comfortable and there's no hurry, no worry, and we go with it how it goes.
Yeah.
And then I usually come back a week or 2 later and show those photos, and we have a video slideshow. So I have a couple cameras going, including the one I have in my hand and a video camera over my shoulder, because I realize that people say the most amazing things when I'm taking still pictures.
Huh.
So I just have it going all the time. And that is often a real huge highlight for people to have, and especially as time goes on and their loved ones no longer there,
Yeah.
to have their voice in the video and things. And there's never a charge for families. Our goal is for our videos and our images to go viral. We want that. We want the world to understand dementia and to hear their story and to honor their loved ones. And so that's, the only piece of that. And we're very flexible. I've gone all over Texas, and I'm even going to Macon, Georgia in another month to do a shoot there. So it's really just kind of depends. And my husband and I were just like, well, let's just go. And
Nice.
and so I'm vaccinated. I always wear a mask, and we're quite careful. We keep our distance, and knowing it's more difficult in communities, but it depends. But certainly in people's homes, we can do that. So that's the Doggies for Dementia. We don't ask families even to donate or if we really want to honor their loved one in that way. If they wish to, they can, but there's really no expectation there.
Oh.
We're funded by donations and sponsorships of companies, businesses that love the idea and want to help fund that. And so we're always open to that.
Yeah.
That's the piece for Doggies for Dementia and the nonprofit. So let's say a family says, we would love to do this with my mom or my dad or whoever it might be, but we really don't want that to be really public. I do that under my for-profit business, Carmen's Legacy Productions, and there's special pricing for families impacted by dementia. So they can still do it, and we don't go public. It's our thing, and it's just as beautiful. It's just we're not. It's just not part of the social media and things.
Okay, that's awesome.
And your website is
doggiesfordementia.org. Doggiesfordementia.org, and we're on Instagram and Facebook, and it's under Carmen Davailus on LinkedIn. Twitter is Doggies for Dementia. I don't do a lot with Twitter, so I don't talk about that a lot. We have a YouTube, a video blog. We call it Experts Dig In with Doggies for Dementia. So we talk. In fact, you guys need to be our guest too. So we talk about people doing amazing things and to help families for some information for family caregivers and others impacted by dementia. So all different walks of life, including families.
Okay.
A lot of families. Mm-hmm.
And I noticed behind you have one of you have a couple of books. Do you want to hold one of them? You want to hold them up? Well, I guess
sure.
You can read. Just
so
see me.
This is the one I say I left my nursing career for.
Yes.
Although I continue to heal, only with the camera. And so this one has 13 different stories, unique stories. And, when I thought I'm like 13 families, I imagine I'm going to hear a lot of the same. And I didn't. And what I realized and how the name came about then was I'm sitting there in my living room with 13 piles of paper and the audio tapes. And I'm like, how are we connected other than dementia? Because I really didn't want it to be all about dementia. I wanted it to be about challenges and triumphs and what are people doing. And it just happened to be dementia was that one common thread. And then I realized there were 13 different spiritual needs. We have basic spiritual needs that we have, similar to our physical and emotional needs and spiritual needs. And each one had a crisis of that spiritual need that they work through to resolve.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that was my master's was in spirituality and healthcare. And why it took me so long to see that as I'm sitting there. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is 1, 2, 3, all. And that's how it came about and why I named it The Sacred Stories from the Other Side of Dementia.
Yeah.
That gives me goosebumps. And it just always comes full circle, doesn't it? It's like, hello, it's right there.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
It was, and even, up until the time I thought I'm going to write this book, I was in the clinic. I really thought I would retire until well beyond, 54, 55, whatever I was then. And a family had come in and their story touched me so. And I thought somebody needs to tell these stories. And I thought, no, I need to write a book. And suddenly, the idea, by the time I'm driving home from work, I had a plan in mind. And, I thought, I better take a photography class. Better at least do that. I've never written a book. I don't know what made me think I could write a book or do any of that. It's a good thing I didn't know all that went into that. I'm not sure I would. Totally. I was just on this, I felt like the Blues Brothers, I'm on a mission from God, and that's all there is. And it just was such an epiphany, and which was not really in character for me.
Were you singing Heidi, 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 ho?
Yeah. I was seeing it in my head. I feel driven like that. I just have to do this. And I don't know what it's going to take, but I know pieces are going to fall into place and it's going to happen. And as I transitioned, through, because it took a while, I transitioned from one world of the clinical world to the other, and there was a big blend in there. I thought, I don't know if I've ever been happier in what I'm doing every day,
That's
that I'm so
awesome.
excited to get up and do.
So
And since then, it has been,
another one of the
yeah.
many messages is that there's always things that we can do, and sometimes we feel caught in our life, but we can follow our heart, follow our passion, and I think that's the biggest reward, is just feeling happy and satisfied with what you get up and do
Oh
every
my
day.
gosh, so lucky.
Yes.
Congratulations for
Yeah.
finding
Thank
that
you,
sweet
thank you.
spot.
I say it made a huge financial change in my life.
Right?
However,
Yeah.
I think it extended my life, especially quality. I hope quantity too.
Yeah.
It's just been yeah. I just
Okay.
wake up excited.
That's great.
Well, we
That's great.
thank you for sharing all
Yes.
of the sharing your stories here today. But go on Carmen's Instagram, Doggies for Dementia, or Facebook or Twitter, wherever you go. Just go. They're so enlightening, and it's just so touching.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us. It's been a pleasure. It's always
Fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Educational. Of course, you can find us at www.educational.com. We're on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, reach out. Be glad to add it to make it easier for you to listen to us every week. Also, we're on all the major social media platforms. We probably hang out on Instagram a little more than others, so reach out to us there. We'd love to interact with you. Also, a video of this interview will go up on YouTube when the episode goes live, so go over there and check that out, as well as some of our previous guests. Until next time, that's going to do it for us. Take care of yourself and take care of your health.